All right, here's the question. Are the Titans finally ready to turn the corner in 2026 with a new coach, a top 5 pick, and a roster that's closer than it looks? Let's talk about that. Welcome back to With the First Pick. On this edition of The Perfect Fix, we got to fix the old Tennessee Titans. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's Pete Prisco, who's been covering the NFL for more than 30 years and just celebrated a quarter century at CBS. Congratulations on that, Pete. You ready to do this?
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, believe me.
Producer Sharon, you should Google this, but back in the day, Pete looked like a young, handsome Andy Garcia, and now he looks more like me, so I don't know who's the winner and who's the loser there. Look, before we get going, if you're watching this on YouTube, Titans fans, let us know in the comments what you think the biggest need is facing this team. Obviously, head coach is a concern. There are plenty of players that you're going to have to figure out in terms of free agency and even the draft. So, Pete, this team started 1-11. But they did win 2 of their final 5 games, and that's progress. So I think we need to start there. So they fired head coach Brian Callahan after that Week 6 loss to the Raiders. He only lasted 23 games before the organization hit the reset button yet again. Let's go through some of the names they've interviewed. I'm not going to read them all. That'll take the whole entirety of the show. But some of the ones that are worth highlighting, and then I'll ask you some questions on the back end here. So they've interviewed Matt Nagy, Kevin Stefanski, and some of the up-and-comers that are pretty popular in terms of coordinators, Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator out of the Chargers, Jeff Hafley, the DC for the Packers. Vance Joseph was head coach previously, but he's doing a great job in Denver. Spagnuolo, Raheem Morris, who they just got rid of in Atlanta. And then these 3 names will start here. Brian Daboll, Mike McCarthy, and then it seems like those 2 are the favorites along with Matt Nagy. Given all your experience in covering the league, and you were there in Jacksonville when they started that franchise with Tom Coughlin, what kind of coach, you don't have to name a name yet, but what kind of coach makes the most sense to turn this thing around?
Well, I think when you look at it, obviously you got to build it around the quarterback. And so I think somebody who has had success with quarterbacks and can take a young quarterback and develop him into what he should be, which is a franchise quarterback. When you draft him number 1 overall, he should be a franchise quarterback. He didn't have a lot of help last year. So now you need to get pieces around him. And we'll get more into that. But I think the number 1 priority is to find a coach who can develop the quarterback. Where would I go? I think Mike McCarthy would be great there. I think he has skins on the wall. He's worked with a lot of great quarterbacks. We know that. And I think he would make a lot of sense if you want to go in that direction. If you want to go in a little younger direction, then I think there's other guys on that list. And you mentioned some of them. I think Daboll would be intriguing, although I don't know if he gets a bounce back right after that. I think Stefanski would be great. I think Kevin Stefanski would be good. But I mean, I do like what they're doing with their search, though, Ryan. And I told you this earlier when we talked. Why not cast the wide net, bring all these guys in, and talk to every single one of them? Get their list of who they would get as a coach, a coordinator at every position. Give me your 10 deep. And then you go through it and you take some of that and you steal it. And you use it for, ideas. And you get ideas from them in terms of what their structure will be and how they'll call games and all of that, because I think it's smart now. This has become a trend. Bring in a bunch of guys, pick their brains, and then find the right one for you.
Let me ask you this, Pete, since you've been doing this for a while here. It feels like this year, maybe even more so than recent years, that there are more good available candidates. Now, some of them are unproven young coordinators, but guys like Chris Shula, he's red hot in terms of wanting to be interviewed. I mentioned Hafley and Mentor. And then there's a group of veterans there. Tom Coughlin was a special case, and you know him really well. But I'll say this. What the Jaguars did last year, they crushed it with Liam Cohen and James Gladstone. They got the GM and the head coach right. Some other recent examples are Houston when they drafted C.J. Stroud. The Commanders have done a good job. They got the head coach, the GM, and the quarterback right when he's healthy. Sean Payton, who you know very well, and Bo Nix. And then the Patriots, of course. Number 1, do you think the Titans regret firing Mike Vrabel? And number 2, do you think this feels deeper in terms of the available candidates?
I don't know if it's deeper because I'm worried about the offensive pool of candidates. It's not that deep.
Right.
And, there are a lot of good defensive coaches, but it's not a lot of great offensive coaches. And when you look at this team, now, having said that, we get pigeonholed a little bit. You can find a great, overseer and a guy who has a defensive background, provided he hires the right offensive guy to work with the quarterback. That's okay. I think the number 1 priority for any coach I would hire is how does he oversee the entire thing? Is he a leader of men? Can he handle trouble? Can he handle the problems that come with being a head coach? And is he also a good football coach? I think those are the requirements, but you can delegate some of that stuff down if you get good coaches underneath you. So I think sometimes we get too caught up. Oh, he's a defensive coach. He's an offensive coach. Hire the best coach, the best head coach for your team. And to me, I think there's also another problem in that building. Mike Borgonzi, the GM, is a guy who came from Kansas City. So he's going to want somebody he's familiar with. He's not going to want a head coach that comes in there and pushes back on him a little bit, whereas in a year or two, they're fighting like they always do in these buildings. So I think that might have some factor in who they hire as well.
Are you sort of highlighting in quotation marks Matt Nagy, who has talked with our Jonathan Jones about taking the year off like Mike McCarthy did after Green Bay, figuring out what he needs to work on and trying to do that reset that way? Would you lean towards Matt Nagy? Because he won Coach of the Year his first year at Chicago, and then it wasn't his quarterback. They drafted Justin Fields, and everything went sideways.
Well, and you're right. Look, the quarterback situation has undone a lot of good coaches in this league. And if you don't have it, don't solve it, you're going to lose your job. It's that simple. Well, the Titans think they have it. So if Matt Nagy is the guy you think can come in there and get him playing at a high level, then he would make sense as well. Sometimes guys need to step back and reevaluate who they are. I've seen this over the course of this many years covering this league. Guys get jobs and they try to be who they aren't. They try to be what they think they should be rather than be themselves, and ultimately ends up costing them. So I think Nagy stepping back is probably a good thing for him, and he's a good, bright offensive mind. So he would be one that would be in consideration. Absolutely.
I think you're right, though. You want to lead them in. You want the Mike Vrabel that you had in the building. Obviously, that didn't work out. But the Mike Tomlins, the John Harbaughs, the Dan Campbells, or, and this is the hard part, you want to be able to find the Ben Johnsons or Mike McDonald's, because there are a lot of those hot young candidates that you hire, and then you figure out they can't coach like they can coordinate. Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald seem to be the exception. Any of those guys you feel about any of these young coordinators have the opportunity to be that sort of impact head coach early on as a young coach?
Jeff Hafley, to me, because he's been a college head coach. I mean, he's done it. And, I liken, you mentioned Tom Coughlin. Tom Coughlin was in the NFL, went to BC, and then was a head coach at Boston College, and then was hired as the head coach in Jacksonville. This guy, Hafley, has been a head coach at Boston College. Now he's in the NFL. He's been a coordinator, and I think he's one of those guys you have to keep an eye on. I think he's one of the guys, when you look at builder, leader of men, he's it. But you have to sit him down and ask, what is your offensive philosophy going to be, and who is going to be the offensive coordinator? How is he going to get this quarterback playing at a high level? Those are the questions I would ask him. From his schematic standpoint, his defense will be fine. From a leader of men, he's done it in college, and he elevated Boston College. They had some, players that were pretty good players, and he made them a lot better. And I think that's what you want as a head coach. So of all those young guys, he would be the one I would consider.
Love it. All right. Let's keep going forward here. Let's take a look at some of these available free agents on the Titans roster. I'm going to throw you some names about guys who they should potentially keep or let walk. You can talk about any guys that maybe they need to move on from or restructure. And then we'll play a little game where I'll throw out some free agents on other teams who will be free agents in 6 or 7 weeks or whenever, about them potentially landing in Tennessee. So currently the Titans are number 2 in available cap space, which is fantastic news, behind only the Chargers, by my estimation, roughly $103 million available. So they got plenty of money to work with. Here are the lists here. You can see it here if you're listening. Kevin Zeitler, the right guard, his contract's up. He's in his mid-30s. Edge rusher Arden Key, Sebastian Joseph Day, who plays on the interior of the defensive line, Jihad Ward, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention punter Johnny Hecker and Joey Sly, the kicker, kick returner James Prochet, Chika Okonkwo, the tight end, who led the team in receptions in 2025. Anything here, Pete? Any guys you want to keep, and any names maybe that you think they need to move on from?
Well, I would keep Sebastian Joseph Day. He's a guy I would keep for the right price. I think he's a good power player on their defensive line, and they have a lot of good players on that defensive line. That's a good unit up front. I would, try and keep Key or Ward at a, not a big contract, but I don't want both my pass rushers going out the door in that type of scenario. So I would try and keep one of them, maybe 2 of them, if I can get them for the right price. Zeitler on a 1-year deal would make sense because he played pretty well at right guard. Another guy that's not on that list, Corey Levin, backup offensive lineman, had played some center, wasn't great at center, played guard, was better. He's a guy I would consider as well. As for the rest of those guys, Okonkwo's interesting. I mean, because look, he has a nice rapport with Cam Ward, so maybe you bring him back and make it easier on the quarterback. The rest of those guys, look, a punter and a kicker, see ya, I'll find one. I'm not paying you. And then as far as the other guys, I don't think there's a lot to lose there. Here's something else too. L'Jarius Sneed and Calvin Ridley have big contracts, and they didn't play up to them. So I know they have a ton of cap room. Second most in the league, like you said. So maybe you go to those guys and say, hey, look, particularly Ridley, and say, look, we're not going to pay you this contract, but we'll do this for you if you want to come back. If not, we're going to set you free. And I think that's something to keep an eye on as well.
No, that's a good point, and even more cap space if they can figure that out. Let's play this game here. So I'm going to go outside the team and look at some potential free agents available in March, and I'll give you their market value. And this is from Spot Track; they estimate those things for us, so we don't have to. So let's start with edge rusher. I'll give you 3 names, and you tell me if any of those are preferable to perhaps bringing back Arden Key or even Jihad Ward. Odafe Owe, who has been going nuts at the end of the season for the Chargers there. He's 27. All these players are 27. Kwity Paye at the Colts, they'll be around $18 million per year. AJ Epinesa, a little cheaper, $10 million per year. He's not quite the edge rusher. Any of those guys interest you as bringing in?
Well, the way Odafe Owe has played the last month of the season, that means the pilot light might have gone on for him, and he is a younger player, so that would make some sense. I'd explore that. Jalen Phillips, you didn't have him on that list.
Oh, yeah.
He's a guy you got to look at as well. I mean, he's probably better than those guys. But he's had some injury issues as well. So he's another guy in terms of the edge rushers that I would look at if I were the Titans.
Again, because they're flush with money and you don't want to blow it all at once, but these are opportunities to get better quicker. In terms of the interior line, you mentioned Zeitler, who's 35, bringing him back. Some alternatives. Tell me what you think about this. John Simpson, the left guard for the Jets. He would be pretty cheap. Spot Track has that at under $10 million. And the Jamari Sawyer, who's had to do everything. Right guards, played left tackle for the Chargers, around $10 million. Any of those guys of interest to you to solidify the middle of that offense?
I mean, no, they don't excite me. I think you can draft and develop. I think you draft and develop those guys. I really do. I think, and sometimes, and we see this happen all the time. These offensive line coaches, they say, I need somebody that knows what I need him to do instead of teaching somebody. And they want somebody immediate, and you get an old guy in there and he breaks down halfway through the season. I don't necessarily like that. I think you draft and develop. And you know what I always say? Draft a college tackle and move him to guard.
Yeah, you do always say that. All right. You mentioned L'Jarius
Sneed. Look at the position.
You can't have 5 guards. You need some tackles, Pete.
Ryan,
all right, let's look at cornerback real quick.
Guards are tackles.
Are they?
Yeah, most of the best guards have been converted tackles. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
All right. Well, you still need tackles at some point. All right. You mentioned moving on from L'Jarius Sneed. Tell me if any of these guys interest you. Jalen Watson, former 7th-round pick of the Chiefs, his contract's up. If they don't bring him back, we're looking around $12 million to $9 million for these names I'm about to mention. Alontae Taylor, who can do everything in the secondary for the Saints, and then your guy Monteric Brown out of Jacksonville. Any of those guys will you be interested in around that price?
I mean, Taylor and Watson are 2. I think, Monteric Brown is a guy who can excel in zone coverage. He doesn't really play well in man-to-man situations. He played better this year, but he doesn't run that well. So I would lean more to Alontae Taylor and Watson if I were going to look for a corner.
And look, I thought the Titans had a pretty good draft this year in addition to Cam Ward. They got Alec Minor and Shamir Dike, along with Gunnar Helm. The 2 wide receivers combined for 92 catches and 8 touchdowns. Gunnar Helm had 44 catches on his own with 2 more touchdowns. So I'll mention this real quick. Potential wide receiver free agents. Alec Pierce maybe goes back to Indy. That would make sense to me, but we'll see. But his asking price is going to be close to $20 million, as will Deebo Samuels probably when he hits free agency for the Commanders. Then finally, Romeo Doubs, who I think is a bargain at $12 million. Any of those guys get you going?
Well, first off, if somebody's paying Deebo Samuel $21 million, they should, or $20 million a year, they should have their GM fired if they do that. So forget that.
Okay.
Come on.
You're out on Deebo.
Alec Pierce would be the one guy. I mean, he's not only, he used to be a one-trick pony. He used to be one of those guys that could go deep. He was, that's what he was, and he can run. And now he's turned into a pretty good route runner. So I think if you're looking for a guy that can take the top off, and that's what Tennessee needs, then I think he would be a guy I would strongly look at. But I think there's going to be a big market for him out there. Romeo Doubs is a good player, but he's had the injury issues, and some of that is concerning as well.
Yep, fair enough. All right, the Titans have 8 draft picks, including picks 4, 35, 66, and 101. So 4 picks in the top 101 picks. All right, I'm going to give this little game we play here. At pick 4, and even if you want to go to pick 35, I'll leave it up to you. I'm going to mention some names. You tell me who will be the most impactful player for the Titans to draft in the 2026 season. So the guy you draft and he hits the ground running. A popular name is going to be edge rusher and linebacker of Ohio State, Arvell Reese. Clemson defensive lineman Peter Woods didn't have a great 2025 season. His 2024 season is really good. You have him with Sweat and Simmons, and now you're really cooking. Are you going to draft a 5'11" safety in Ohio State's Caleb Downs that early? And then if you want to take a right tackle and move him to guard, either Spencer Fano out of Utah or CeCe Malinoa out of Miami. Or, Pete, I'll give you this option. At number 4, do you want a team to fall in love with a Ty Simpson, for example, and hope they trade up and you just move down?
If I could move down, I would move down. Anybody who can move down in this draft, get the hell out of there. There's a lot of players in this draft. There's not a lot of star potential in this draft. Am I taking a safety in that spot? Absolutely not. I mean, no conceivable way am I taking him in that spot. So cross him off the list.
You know what, though, Pete, to interrupt you, let's take the Toledo safety at pick 35. There's your answer right there, if you want to
There you go. There you go. I'm okay with that. That would make sense. But at this spot, I'm not taking that. I don't look. Woods is a defensive tackle. They got 2 good ones because Sweat played well this year. I don't think you need one there, so I'm not taking him in that spot. Reese would be the one. That's the guy.
Okay.
And if you could get him, you need an edge rusher. You need a young edge rusher who can explode off the corner. I think that's the pick right there if you have an opportunity to get that.
Yeah, no, I think that's right because of the versatility he provides. They do need help at both positions in terms of off ball and edge. We can get the safety in round 2 if we want. We can get a wide receiver in round 2 if we choose to do that. You can find interior offensive line help, or you can draft tackles in rounds 3 and 4 or whatever and move them inside if that's what you want to do, Pete. And this cornerback safety class is actually pretty deep. So I think that's the way you go about it, in addition to all the salary cap space we talked about. And we'll get to that in more in a second. By the way, Titans fans, again, if you're watching us on YouTube, let us know. Which of these free agents do you want, whether they're on your team or some of the ones we talked about that fit within your budget, and that's pretty much everybody? And which player do you think makes the most sense to draft at number 4 to be that immediate impact guy? All right, Pete, we always do a nod to Jim Moore playoff segment here where we try to figure out. That's much better. We should have had you do it. Try to figure out if the team we're talking about that we're trying to fix is legit a playoff team in 2026. Now, look. Given what we've talked about, I feel a lot better about this roster, knowing the salary cap space situation, knowing that you have your quarterback, and knowing that you have the draft picks that are pretty high in terms of having 4 in the top 101. But you don't have a head coach. There's been dysfunction in this organization starting at the top. So, and the division's gotten a lot better. We used to say this division's always wide open. It's not anymore, it feels like. Realistically, how far away are the Titans from turning this thing around? Obviously, it starts with getting the head coach right.
Well, I think they're a couple years away. Look, if they have their franchise quarterback, so that's a step in the right direction, but you got to get the right coach and you got to start building around that guy. So I think next year is going to be another year. It's going to be a year of progress. And by that, I mean, the quarterback gets better. The young players grow up. You mentioned those draft picks. You get, maybe 5 wins, 6 wins, and then you hope like heck the following year you're competing for the division title. That's the way it should play out because we know how these teams aren't patient anymore. And when you don't have patience, the coach 2 years in, if he's not doing very well, he's going to get fired. So ideally 6 wins next year. And then the year after that, you push for the division title. That should be the model. Because I don't think the way the roster is constructed, even with all that cap room and the draft picks, that they can turn it around, particularly with the way the Jaguars and the Texans have played this year. So I think it's more of a couple-year rebuild. And they need to be patient with that coach.
That's right. They need to be patient with whoever the coach is. But I think, would you agree that the 2023 Titans, when they drafted C.J. Stroud, and the 2024 Commanders, when they drafted Jaden Daniels, those teams wildly exceeded expectations with the quick turnarounds? Well,
yeah, and look what happened to the Commanders. I mean, they're back.
He got hurt.
Back in the pack. Yeah, well, they got hurt, but the team wasn't going to. Even if he was healthy, they weren't going to make the playoffs. I just think you got to have it built. You got to have it built around those guys. And right now, the Titans are trying to build it, and the cap room and the draft picks will give them an opportunity to do that. Now, whatever they do with them, that's the key point, because we know these guys have blown picks before. Everybody does, but you can't blow those premium picks. They need to get those right.
All right, just give me a one-word answer here before we take a break here. Of the 4 teams picking at the top of the draft, tell me which one is set up for the quickest turnaround, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 years, doesn't matter to me. Las Vegas, the Jets, the Cardinals, or the Titans?
The Jets. They have so much draft capital in the next couple of years that they will get their quarterback. They have a good young offensive line. I will take the Jets.
All right, we shall see.